Football, Dynasty Nerds, Bettor Sports Network. Guys, I feel like Will Ferrell in Talladega Nights. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with my hands. I don't know what to do with this many points. We're seeing more points scored in this game than we're seeing like the last couple of weeks combined. It's absolutely absurd. Tons of points, offensive touchdowns, defensive touchdowns, back and forth game. Saints have got to do something to get back in this game because it was a close ball game until about 2 minutes to go. And things changed drastically. All right, things changed drastically. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about this game. We have some fantastic guests coming on. Jay Stein coming on at 10:15. He has an awesomely unique way of looking at fantasy football. And I think it is going to be incredibly beneficial for redraft players, for dynasty players alike. The lens that he looks through, I think, is really cool. So we want to talk about that tonight. And, of course, Dennis Bennett is back. He's only been gone 1 week, but it feels like so much longer because we're used to seeing him every week after that. So good to have him back. Should I pick up Hurst or Gesicki? I have to get a tight end. Is this for Dynasty? I'm assuming this is probably for redraft at this point. Gesicki has been a little bit more involved lately in the offense. But with that being said, I really do like what I've been seeing out of the Cincinnati offense, how they've been targeting him a little bit more. And they have the Falcons this week, which I think they should be able to put up some points against. T. Higgins is still kind of back and forth with his injury. He's not fully healthy. He's coming back, all this stuff back and forth. So I am going to lean Hurst just barely, but it's very, very close. But that's a great question. So Jalen Hurts would be the guy that I would be looking to get because Mike Gesicki too, he could be traded at any point, which could be a huge boost in value. It could crater his value as well, depending on where he goes, what team he goes to, because he's been looking pretty good the past few weeks with the Dolphins. So I think it's safer. If you need safety, I would absolutely go with Hurst. But if you need upside, Gesicki does have that upside. So more what your team needs. Is your team a bottom seller team and they're just trying to get some juice? Well, maybe Gesicki would be the right route then because he's a little more risk but a little bit more reward. However, on the opposite side of that, if you're a really solid team and your team's putting up top 3, top 4 points every week and you just need a steady Eddie, I think Hurst is your guy. So I think it's going to be team specific there. My producer tells me you can't trade a man who does that type of gritty. He's a national treasure. Yeah, with a solid team. And make sure I'm saying it right. Jalen, I could be pronouncing it incorrectly, so I want to make sure I'm getting it right. But yeah, I would say with a solid team, then I would go for Hurst. But national treasure with that type of gritty. You know, Robert Griffin III called it an unseasoned gritty. And I can't say that I necessarily disagree. It is now I can't dance. We've talked about this on the show, what a square I am. And dancing falls right in line with that. So it's not like I could do better. It's not like I would get out there and gritty better than that. But I can see it and I can tell you if there's something wrong. And there's something wrong. Saw Gator in the chat already saying it's a crazy Thursday. It is, man. So many points. 2 interceptions returned for touchdowns and just a little bit over a minute time span. Crazy. Something you don't see very often. But that being said, the Saints are driving. They are it's 3rd and goal right now, and they're at roughly the 7-yard line. So there's still points to be had. Things are moving. I did my prize picks for this week. Overall, feeling decent. I took the over on 210.5 for Dalton. We're going to be good to go with that. I think he might have already gotten it even on this drive. Let's see here. No, he's at 186. I took the under with 245 passing yards for Kyler Murray. So feeling solid about that. I took the over on Kamara for rushing yards. He's in the 40s. He's at 46. I took the under on 51.5 rushing yards for Eno. He already beat that. So definitely didn't get it right on Eno. I thought last week was indicative. And then I took the over. I only did 6 this week. I took the over for both the main wide receivers, Chris Olave with 60.5 yards. He's over that already with 81 yards. And then the over for DeAndre Hopkins at 62.5. He's only at 42, but he has he's got some time left in this game to finish that up. Oh, I thought that was a touchdown. It was not. But so crazy game so far. We've got lots of points. We've got lots of things going on. Gator says Amazon forgot to call the Saints Cardinals about scoring on Thursday. Yeah, you're supposed to tell them these are low scoring, boring games, no action, no excitement. They forgot to tell them, but 28-17, 9:44 to go in the third quarter. It has been a fun game. Jolin says the Amazon broadcast has been awful, in my opinion. Yeah, Al Michaels is a legend, and he's been so good for so long. Him and Kirk Herbstreit don't really seem to have the chemistry yet. Because it's funny, because I like both of these guys individually, but them together so far just really hasn't done it for me. So I'm not going to disagree, but we have some AMAs going on this week, so feel free to ask any questions that you want. I'm going to try to answer as many as I can during the show. Might even have you guys come on the show. We'll talk to you about some of your questions. Redraft, Dynasty, doesn't matter. We'll do either one. In about 10 minutes here, Jay Stein mentioned earlier he's going to be on. Dennis Bennett's going to be on. I'm sure at some point our boy Gator's going to call because everyone loves Gator, and he is a highlight of the Thursday nights. The most official, unofficial part of the Thursday night BSN Dynasty Nerds show is my man Gator. But let's talk about a few other things while we got some time before we get Jay in here. First of all, I want to talk about, I know you're shocked, rookies, that's right. I love rookies, and I want to talk about one rookie in particular. The 101 and most, if not all, Dynasty drafts this offseason, Reese Hall. Reese Hall, every single week, has been getting it done. Currently, he is the running back 6 overall, despite not getting, RB1 type workload the first couple games. He's always being involved in the passing game, and he's been fantastic there. He's done well between the tackles, and the team is leaning on him. Not to mention, their next couple games are against teams that are pretty solid against pass defense. So they're probably just going to continue to do more of the same, lean on this running game here, and they're going to give the ball to Breece Hall. My question is, in Dynasty and Redraft, you can tell me both, but right now, where would you rank Breece Hall among other running backs? Because I've gotten to the point where I have Breece Hall as my top guy in Dynasty. That's right. It's ahead of Jonathan Taylor, which is tough because I love Jonathan Taylor, and I have no doubt that he's going to come back with a vengeance once he's fully healthy. Love him. Saquon Barkley having an amazing year. Austin Eckler, for redraft purposes, he's a little older, so most people don't really have him in that conversation. But with as bad as his season started, he has figured it out quickly. He's been getting in the end zone, much to my dismay after saying, he's due for touchdown regression. He threw that right back in my face. So, you'll have that. But despite all of those guys, Breece Hall is my top guy. When you can get somebody in their rookie campaign, and yes, there's only a 2-year difference between him and Jonathan Taylor. I know that's not huge, but for running back, that's the one position where that's going to matter the most. Receiver, we expect most of these guys to be going from what's up, Gator? You're talking to me on the BSN, you're talking to me on YouTube. He's all over the place. But we're expecting these receivers to play till 29, 30, 31, 32, right? We're expecting them to go into their very early 30s or at least hit 30. Quarterbacks, we're seeing this right now on a level that we've never seen before. We're talking 40, 41. I mean, Tom Brady's 45 right now. Matt Ryan's approaching 40. Ben Roethlisberger just retired right before 40. Drew Brees went to 41, 42. We have a lot of guys that are going for a long time. So 2 years is not going to matter as much at the quarterback position. At the tight end position, we're seeing Travis Kelce do it right now at 34. We're seeing other guys get to 30 and looking just fine. Running back, though, doesn't work that way at running back. Once you get to 27, 28, your odds of being a running back one anymore are pretty low. There's a few guys. There are exceptions to the rule, but touching 30 is almost impossible now at the running back position. Not necessarily on a roster, but as a lead back, a guy that you can consider a RB1, RB2, flex play. You don't see that out of guys that are 29, 30, 31 years old. So that 2-year difference is enough for me to bump Reese Hall above Jonathan Taylor. John said, on a side note, what a double play in the Yanks-Stros game. I am not watching that right now. I do have the Thursday night football game up. I am a Cleveland Guardians fan. I was rooting for them. They were a couple years ahead of where everyone thought they would be. So I'm not heartbroken to see them lose. But after being up 2-1, it was looking pretty good. They were doing a lot of the small things right. Just eventually, that Yankees team is just it's a good team. It's a good team with a lot of star power. And that star power came to play, especially in game 5. So the Yankees-Stros series, though, is a tough one nationally because the Yankees, even though they have a big fan base, a lot of people don't like the Yankees. I don't hate them as much as everyone else does, but there's a lot of people that don't like the Yankees. On the flip side, if there's a team that might be hated more than the Yankees, it's the Astros. After that cheating, look, I went to the Guardians game earlier this year, and we're talking several years since the cheating scandal, right? Several years. Still, every time, and really had nothing to do with us. We weren't in the playoffs that year. Every time Jose Altuve came to the plate, every time Alex Bregman came to the plate, boo, boo. So this is a series filled with two teams that most people really hate. John's saying Red Sox are always hated. Yeah, Red Sox are up there too. You know, a lot of the historically successful franchises tend to have a good following, but tend to also have a lot of haters. That's why you see the same thing with the Patriots and somewhat the Cowboys, I guess. I say the somewhat part because of the success. Like, they were successful, but we haven't seen them be successful for a long time. So I don't know. I'm sure I'll get some Cowboy fans chime in, but we've already talked about my not disdain. That's not the right word. But my lack of respect for Troy Aikman's Hall of Fame career. So it's not a surprise that I would be down on the Cowboys as well. So, you know, I'm rooting for the Eagles in that division. Go Eagles. All that being said, though, getting back to these running backs, though. So I have gotten to the point where I have moved Reese Hall in my dynasty rankings to the top spot. He is my top dynasty running back, then followed by Jonathan Taylor. Very close, very closely. Could that switch in a couple weeks? Absolutely. It's that close, but I'm giving the nod to Brees right now because of the age. He would be the top guy. If I had to do a draft today, he would be my top pick, my top selection. Then if I flip to Saquon Barkley, I think there's a little bit of a tier gap. And once again, it has to do with the age. And the health is the other thing. You know, we've not necessarily seen Saquon super healthy. This year we have. But over his first few seasons, we saw his rookie campaign was awesome. And then after that, it was a bit slower health-wise. So that's where I'm at right now. I have him ranked as the number 1 overall back. And with the age and the decline of a lot of these other running backs, guys like Joe Mixon, guys like Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott, Derrick Henry, all of those guys. And it sounds like we're going to have Jay hop on here any second. Maybe we'll have to ask him about those players. So as soon as he hops on here, we'll talk to him about that. But those guys with the decrease in their value dynasty wise, we've got to move some of these young guns up. So Jay's joined the show. Jay, how you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Welcome to the Bettor Sports Network show here with Dynasty Nerds. Now, Jay, I don't know if you heard in the very beginning, but I was talking you up a little bit. Did you hear that?
I did hear a little bit. I don't know if I'll live up to those expectations, but yeah, I
All right.
appreciate that, man.
It's a lot of pressure. Because the people are expecting greatness. No, Jay, I had the pleasure of talking with Jay this off season. There's this awesome fantasy football convention. We got a chance to talk just a little bit about, him with Nerds and how long he's been there and what he's been doing. And after that, obviously I kept a better eye out on what he was doing. And this investment series that he's been doing with fantasy football has been fascinating. So, Jay, can you give us a quick breakdown of how you came about doing this and what it means as far as how you evaluate players?
Yeah. So I come from an investments background. That's what I do for a career. And so it's a natural, jump over into fantasy football and looking at a fantasy football from an investments lens. And basically what I try to do is I try and look at players from a value perspective. And really what I'm trying to do is find a discrepancy between what you have to pay for a player and what I actually think he's worth. And so I have a series here on the Dynasty Nerds. We're up to 10 volumes now. And the theme here is basically we use a ratio analysis like we do in investing to figure out what each of these players could be valued. And we use for money, like in the stock market, you invest to make more money.
Right.
What I try and do is I try and invest in fantasy football players to make more KTC, and that's keep trade cut. That's a common dynasty trade calculator where they
Yeah.
basically use a crowdsourcing to figure out what players' prices should be. And what I try and do is I try and figure out, okay, that has a little bit of a sentiment to it. It has a little bit of a, players get pushed too far one way or the other. What are these players actually worth? And then try and figure out what the difference is between what they're worth and what you have to pay for them.
Yeah. Brilliant. And I think there's a lot of people that they're like, yeah, that's what I do normally, but it's all in here. Like, oh yeah, I think this guy's undervalued. I think this guy's overvalued, but there's no hard data to back up that that's actually true. So for you, once you really dug into this, once you really got everything flowing with it, what surprised you about what the numbers were telling you? Like, did your preconceived biases that we all have, do those seem to typically come true? Or sometimes you find it the opposite where you're like, I really thought I was going to like that guy, but I'm finding now that his price is just way too high.
Yeah, there's lots of things that come out of this. I can't even name all of them, but like some of the things that I think about, like so when rookies were coming out,
Mm-hmm.
my model has a lot to do with how much players are priced versus how many points they score.
Okay.
It's the PE ratio. So like in investing, you use price to earnings ratio. What I use is price to earnings in fantasy football. So price is KTC, the number from Keep Trade Cut, and earnings is a fantasy points per game. So that's kind of how the model works, and basically you use that to compare like for like players. So when I was looking at rookies, I was thinking, man, all of these guys are going to come out as sells because their price is getting pushed up and up and up, further and further and further. And just like every offseason,
Sure.
everybody wants the new young rookie that they think can break out. But the consensus estimates for what their points per game would be generally were pretty low. So all the experts would put estimates out there where they have experience, they understand that rookies don't always hit, and so they kind of hedge. They don't
Sure.
exactly give them what they actually think the points per game. So I thought all these rookies were going to come out, and I thought they were all going to look expensive, and they'd all fit on my sell list. But actually, when I did it, I only had a couple of names come out for buys and sells. But that was a fun lesson learned. Quite a few lesson learned. I think the thing that I get excited about is when the market gets reactionary and maybe isn't acting rational. And what I try and do is take advantage of those type of opportunities. So when we sort of push players down, whether it's injury or just sentiment from players, they get pushed down. But given how many points they've scored in the past, and what the experts are thinking for consensus projections are, that they are eventually going to score points. And so that's where I get excited is those good players that look like good investments. They come along every once in a while, but those tend to be those home run ones. So
give me an example or two of some guys recently that we saw the market way overreact on, and you're just sitting there like, I'll take this share, I'll take that share, give me a couple of those examples.
Yeah, so one that's interesting. This is actually my only one. So I'm player agnostic. I don't care if the player is good or bad. All I'm looking for is discrepancy between what his price is and what he's fundamentally worth.
Okay.
One guy that I've done twice now. So this is the only guy I've done twice, and I actually just downgraded him today. Was Wayndale Robinson.
Okay.
So back in July, his price on KTC was 2,500. And I thought it should be 2,800-ish, right?
Okay.
So I put a buy on him. I think there, could be like 15% upside, right? So that happens. It works out. By August, training camp comes away. He's looking good. It works out. So I end up downgrading, locked in that gain in KTC, and moved him to a hold, right? So then he gets injured, and his price goes right back down to 2,500 on KTC. And I say, well, he's good. I'm pretty sure he's going to score points. That's what the consensus expectations are for him to score lots of points. So back at the end of September, September 27th, his KTC was back down to 2,500 again, and this time I put a target price of 3,200 on him. And just today, he got to 3,201. So his KTC appreciated from the end of September to today 26%. It's about like 660 total KTC. And this is a guy that now I've done it twice where, sentiment got tough on him because of the injury. Right. People forgot about it. They hadn't seen him play. KTC goes back down, right back to where it was, where I had a buy before on him. I put the buy back on. 2 weeks later, we're back at, a hold here. Now, what I say is the easy money's been made, right? So there was a discrepancy between what his price is and how many points he can score. Now we figure out, if he's good, how is he going to tier up to being a higher valued player? And the only way you do that is prove it on the field. So, right now we have a certain expectation for what his points per game is. If he starts performing really well, then we can sort of bump him up into a different tier, a different cluster, start comparing him to different players. And that's the hard work. That's how we figure out, is this guy really good or not? Right. I'm willing to hold and watch and listen and see what happens. I'm no longer advocating you go out and buy every single share of Wayndale you can right now, because, right now his price reflects what he can do on the field. So
that makes sense. So when you're looking at the projections, because you talked about what their current value is versus what the projections are you looking more at season long projections? Do you have career long projections? And how do you value short-term gain versus long-term gain?
Yeah, that's a great point. So basically what I do is I try and put these players into clusters to compare them. So I put them into categories. For QBs, I sort it by age, and then sort of what their floors and ceilings are, how many points per game they've averaged over time. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of the longer term approach. And I guess the point here is that we're not valuing Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen the same. They should be right. Justin Jefferson should be compared to Jamar Chase, and Adam Thielen to sort of older veterans that score some points. And so from that perspective, you're kind of taking all that into account. Now, when I'm looking at points, when I started publishing here at Dynasty Nerds back in February, I was using last year's actual points to
Mhm.
come up with valuations. Then somewhere in the summer, I switched to what the consensus projections were for season-long projections on a points per game basis for this 2022 season. And now I'm in the process of actually switching to some sort of combination between actual and projections.
Nice.
And what I'm doing is each week that these guys, perform in the field, I'm taking their actual results and throwing that in the model. And I'm also using that and comparing versus what season long 2022 points projections are, and giving players sort of a benefit of doubt using some of those contexts to kind of massage it to make it make sense a little bit. Because sometimes it doesn't necessarily make sense. But right now, I'm sort of in the middle. I'm in the middle between using actual and full season 2022 projected points per game.
Love it. So we
Yeah.
we have a question that I do want to get to, Cavelli's question here, but before we get to that, where because we look at things in the short term of this season with specifically rookies, because I'm sure they're some of the hardest ones because you don't have last year's to go off of. You're kind of starting from scratch. How do you determine their value as far as long term?
Yeah. So one of the other things I do at Dynasty Nerds is I do sort of prospect profiles from an analytical perspective.
Uh-huh.
So I play a lot of Devi, I play a lot of C2C. I go in and get into the data and actually come up, kind of bucket them into categories of whether I think they're, could be good or have a high probability of success in the NFL. And so that goes a long way into figure out what clusters these guys should be in.
Mhm.
So for instance, like Reese Hall, one of the higher graded running backs coming out this year from my perspective, from an analytical perspective. I think most people would kind of agree with that.
Yeah.
So, I have different groups of players that I can put him in. Do I put him in with immediately with the likes of Jonathan Taylor, Javonte Williams, DeAndre Swift, or do I like sort of hedge it and put him in categories with like Najee Harris, J.K. Dobbins, Kenneth Walker? Where does he kind of fit um,
Sure.
in the different clusters? And so using that sort of prospect profile, what buckets, what probability of success, that leads me to put them into different categories. And I'm valuing players based on who they're categorized with, who they're clustered with. So Brees Hall, that would be a guy that I would had a pretty high grade on. Thought he was going to had a pretty high probability of success. So I put him in that sort of elite kind of category with Jonathan Taylor's, and
Nice.
then I valued him that way. And so that's kind of how I think about how to put rookies and think about them from a long term perspective. Is sort of where do they fit among from a comparative or relative basis among the rest of the running backs. And like I said, I'm not really trying to judge if a player is good or not good, but I do want to fit him in the right category. I want to do my
Sure.
best to fit him into the right category of how you should value the player.
Yeah. So
So
you don't
that's kind of the
necessarily know if
process.
they'll be at the top of that tier or the bottom of that tier. You don't really care. You just want to make sure that they're in the right tier.
Right, exactly. They're in that right tier, they're in the right cluster. Then I can pick out where, well, okay, for instance, quarterbacks, right? So, Kyler Murray, um, he's in a tier. I think he's has sort of this elite quarterback player. I mean, he scores a lot of points.
Yeah.
I think when you look at expected points this season, which he's underperforming by quite a bit. I mean, he's QB3, QB4, and expected points. He's underperforming those expected points, but like you can get him on KTC for 6,000. I don't know whether it's like people don't like him, they don't like the situation or whatnot, but he scores 20 points per game. And then you have players in that same category like Lamar Jackson, Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts. They're all in the 8,000s KTC. And yeah, sure, Josh Allen might score, 5 more points, and yeah, he looks a little better than Kyler Murray, of course. But when you think about value, you can't get much better than that, where you get a guy that scores a lot of points but for some reason he's 2,000 KTC less than everybody else that you would
Sure.
compare him to that score the same amount of points. They're all young, they're all the same, age, they all have a long dynasty career ahead of them. So, those are the kinds of things that you're trying to pick out.
Love it. Well, Cavelli asks, keeping in this theme of these rookies, and I talk about rookies a lot on the show because it's something I enjoy the process of the college to the NFL. So we talk a lot of rookies. He asks, how would you rank, and I'll rank them as well, but how would you rank the rookie wide receivers of Olave, Pickens, Wilson, London, and Burks? So we got 5 guys: Olave, Pickens, Wilson, London, Burks. Now that you've seen 6 games of film, I know you don't do film as much, but for you, how would you rank those 5 guys?
So, yeah, okay. So let me tell you how I had them ranked before the season.
Okay.
And then I'll tell you how I've had it finished. So Burks was number 1.
Okay.
Then I had, let's
Assuming
see,
Wilson or London.
Drake London,
Okay.
then Garrett Wilson. Then I had Sky Moore.
Okay.
So a little bit of a miss there.
So far, we'll see.
Then, yeah, so far, exactly. We'll see. And then, I believe I was Pickens and then Olave.
Okay. So you're pretty down on Olave to start the year.
Yeah. So the way that my model worked is just that Olave went back for his 4th year, and then it's a lot of has to do with like market share and production, and he kind of tailed off that 4th year.
Mm-hmm.
He was sort of getting outproduced by both Jackson Smith and Jigba and Garrett Wilson. And so that kind of put a little bit of a ding, even though he's a first round prospect and went to a pretty good situation. Maybe he's a little lighter, but yeah, still good. But that my model wasn't showing anything special. Now I'd have to move Olave quite a bit up, and I'd probably have to move Treylon Burks quite a bit down.
Okay.
But I'm still hopeful. I'd say Drake London 1. I'd still go Garrett Wilson 2. I'd probably do Chris Olave 3, Treylon Burks 4.
And George
Pickett,
Pickens 5.
George Pickens 5. Yeah.
Of that group, at least.
Is that of that group? How you doing it?
We're pretty darn close. We're pretty darn close. For me, they've stayed relatively the same as they were preseason, which doesn't always work out that way. I had Devontae Smith number 1 last year over Jamar Chase. Obviously, that switched after a couple of weeks, but this year they've stayed relatively the same for me. So I had Garrett Wilson as 1, and I'm going to stick with him at 1. And then I had London at 2. And yeah, actually, it's going to stay the same. So that would be the only difference from yours, though, is I'll have Wilson at 1 and London at 2. And then after that, I'll have Olave, Burks, and then Pickens, which is roughly what I had preseason. So now, could Garrett Wilson end up getting switched with London? I could see it as a possibility. And with how Olave's playing in the situation there in New Orleans, he could end up passing both of them. I mean, he's played fantastic. He's getting the big plays, the yards. But right now, that's how I would rank it. Wilson, London, Olave, Burks, Pickens for me.
And I was so high on Burks. So like it's just kind of sad. I'm excited for him to come back and start playing again, but like his prospect profile, his model looked really, really good.
Yeah.
So I just want to see him get on the field and start, producing and doing some things, because I'd be like excited to move him up. But yeah, it's awesome that we're pretty similar there, except for just flip flopping 1 and 2 there. So.
Yeah, not too far off. Not too far off at all. And speaking of specifically Treylon Burks, he was a really tough one for me because you saw the flashes, right? You saw the flashes in college of some of the things he was able to do. But this is the differences. And I'm a big proponent of you need the analytics and the film. Like if you rely only on one, you're missing half the prospect, But for me, I think this is where I differed from the analytics to where I didn't see enough consistency in his route running. I was disappointed with his weight. I was disappointed with there was just a lot of those things that I would see as far as breaking down film that I was like, I'm not sold. I'm not sold on the guy. The ceiling's there, but man, the floor's there too. And I I don't know. I think there's a lot safer prospects in guys like Wilson and London and Olave and guys like that. So so that's why I ended up being down on him. I had him. It was either 6th or 7th in this rookie class preseason. So I was pretty far down. I had Jahan Dotson higher, and I had Sky Moore higher as well. So I was down on him, but he was starting for all the negative things here. He was starting to get higher route percentages. Like he was running routes on more plays. He was doing more with them. He still didn't have a big game. His best game was like 4 for 48 or something like that. So he still didn't have that big game, but things were trending in the right direction. And I know, even though I'm not a fan of Burks, I've been fans of other players where I've seen that same kind of thing where it's like, oh yeah, things are coming. And then you get an injury or a suspension or whatever. And you're like, he was this close to like getting to prove it. And then this had to happen. So that's always frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, I'm reminded of guy like a Jalen Reagor, where like he just was like he did, from an analytical perspective, he was so awesome.
Yeah.
He looked good, and then like we were just
I liked him
waiting.
too.
We were just waiting for him to prove it, and it just never came. I hope to goodness that that's not Traylon Burks, because I think he's pretty special when he gets the ball in his hands.
He at
for
least
that
has the size
yards
that
after
Reagor didn't
contact
have.
thing.
Yeah, he at least has the
So
size that Reagor didn't.
yeah.
So we'll see. All right, Jay. As far as I was talking about it right before you came on. So going back to your model and how you do things as far as like investing in players and whatnot. When it comes to these older running backs, do you typically see these guys in your models as buys because there is still production for a 1 or 2 year window? Or do you typically see these as bad investments because long term you're going to be losing out? Like, how do these guys typically shake out, the Alvin Kamara's, Derrick Henry, Ezekiel Elliott, like those kind of players?
Yeah, so the thing is, I'm comparing those players to each other.
Okay.
So what I do is I take a look at that group, that particular player. So like Nick Chubb, Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry. I put them all in the same bucket because they're at the same age profile. They score similar amounts of points. So I want to take a look at that bucket, and I want to figure out who's the cheapest in that bucket.
Okay.
Now, when I give recommendations, like most people do, I want to know whether you're competing this year
Sure.
or you're in rebuild or not. So I'm not, I have preferences. So if you're in a rebuild, I'm selling sort of the older players and trying to collect as many first round picks as possible because they don't get hurt, they don't get injured, they only increase in value.
Yep.
It's not a specific name tied to the pick, so you can trade it with anybody in the league. Where if you have a Derrick Henry, half the league might just say no, thank you.
Right.
So I definitely look at that group and I look and try and find of the people in that group, the sort of the age, the older veterans that score a lot of points of that group, who looks mispriced based on how many points they score and what their KTC price is. And so that's how I would go about trying to make a recommendation. I would say, like you're buying this guy because he looks cheap relative to the other players, but your expectation is that like running backs have age cliffs and his KTC shouldn't go up too much. Like it shouldn't be appreciating
Right.
too much, but of that group, this is the cheapest guy to buy, the cheapest price you have to pay to earn points on the field. And so that's how I'd kind of look at it.
Love it. Love it. All right. Before we get you out of here, anything else about your model, about how you analyze players? They're like, I wanted to make sure I got this part out before I stepped away.
Yeah, no, I just really appreciate anybody going and reading the series on Dynasty Nerds. It's called The Intelligent Fantasy Football Investor. I go and talk a lot about sort of different investment concepts and try and bring it into fantasy football. Watching the stock market and also into fantasy football, there's a lot of good stuff in there. I talk about behavioral finance. I do different types of like scenario or sensitivity analyses. And I give a lot of people buy and sell recommendations. So when I go and create this PE model and try and figure out what their fundamental values are, I'm going through and then also like picking the ones that I think, I have conviction in and giving you a buy or sell recommendation. And the buy or sell recommendation comes with a target price, and how much like potential upside or downside there is to that particular player. And then once I close out a trade, so let's say I, put a buy on somebody, and then a month later, I downgrade them from a buy to a hold. I lock in that trade. I lock in that KTC dollars, if you will,
Sure.
and I can have a track record. And so that's kind of the other part of the whole process here is, I want to be explicit, open with my track record. So I have that available. I put it in most of the Intelligent Investor series articles. So you can kind of see like how good I have been or sort of how much KTC I've made people from my recommendations over time.
Love it, man. Love it. Where can the good folks find you on Twitter?
Yeah, so my Twitter is @_Jason Stein, JASONSTEIN. Yeah, and I do Dynasty Nerds content. It's called The Intelligent Fantasy Football Investor on Dynasty Nerds. Go and read it, please. I'm also in the Discord. If you're a Dynasty Nerds member, go and get into that Discord and start chatting up with everybody. You can sometimes get in with Garrett or myself or some of the other guys, do some AMAs. And there's a lot of fun stuff that's on there. I do Devi work for Dynasty Nerds as well, sort of analytical profiles. And I also do some work with the guys over at the Devi Royale on Devi analytical profiles as well. So
awesome, man. You stay busy, that's for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah. And thank you so much for having me on the show, man. I really appreciate it. It's been fun.
For sure, man. We'll get you on again for sure sometime. Appreciate you taking the time out. And we do not live that far apart. We got to try to get together sometime.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. One of these weeks we got to get everybody together, including your next guest, Dennis, culture coach, man. Got to get all of us together.
Get a Columbus crew. Maybe we'll we can't obviously watch Thursday night football because I got to be here for this. Maybe we can get together for a Monday night football game though.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
All right, buddy. You have a good night.
All right, man. You too.
All right. Well, that is I wanted to get Jay on here to tell you about that investment series because I think it is a fantastic way to look at fantasy football. I think often there's a lot of people that it's just, you're going with your gut, you're going with your instinct, or, I watch this guy and I like him, but it's a good, unique way. And it's for as complex as it is, it's simple concepts, right? We're looking at how much a player costs according to the community. And then what can I actually how valuable is that player? Do I deem that player to be more valuable than the community does? And then how can I capitalize on that value? So it's awesome stuff that he does. Definitely recommend going and following him on Twitter @Jason Stein. So that's going to wrap up our first segment here. We're going to take a quick break, and then we will be back talking the fourth quarter of this Thursday night football game.
Corey, Nando, and Friends, presented by Mayo Media on Bettor Sports Network.
I'm convinced that Babe Ruth is a fictional character. Babe Ruth is not real. No, it's not. Babe Ruth is not real. We've been hoodwinked. We've been bamboozled. We've been led astray. We've been run amok.
Keep going.
Babe Ruth, I don't know the rest. Babe Ruth is a fictional character. I'm dead serious. Babe Ruth is a fictional character. Y'all are never going to get me to believe that Babe Ruth is real. Babe Ruth is like a baseball Santa Claus. I'm not buying it. After I saw those of Babe Ruth, there's no way you can tell me that Babe Ruth is a real person. Who do you know? There is nobody under the sound of my voice that has ever seen Babe Ruth play. I asked my pop, you ever seen Babe Ruth play? He's like, no. Nobody's ever seen Babe Ruth play.
I mean, come on.
I'm telling you, Babe Ruth is a fictional character. Even Babe Ruth baseball cards, it looked like it's drawn. Babe Ruth is not real. Y'all trying to pull a fast one. Listen, I don't know who made this up. Maybe it was Phil Rizzuto. Maybe it's the Lenny Melnick. But Babe Ruth is not a real person. There's no way Everything about Babe Ruth is sketchy. If you didn't go to the games, how do you know that it really happened? Or I listened on the radio. You listen to Ovaltine on the radio. That old school radio was all fiction. Everything on old school radio was fake. But you think Babe Ruth is real?
Look, he lived until 1948. So if you find someone who's like 85 years old, they might have remembered him when he was little, when they were a little teenager.
Babe Ruth was made up by baseball purists. I am certain.
You do that thing where you pause the Babe Ruth video and you zoom in and you zoom in and you zoom in. And you see like some artist's autograph, like right here.
Yeah, you like
some digital mark right here. Yeah.
Somebody needs to investigate this and see if Babe Ruth is a real person. I'm pretty sure Babe Ruth is a fictional character created to make people think that like there was this great jolly old baseball player that drank beers and ate hot dogs and hit 60 home runs. Like the home run record before Babe Ruth was like 14. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But
now he figured it out. Like who figured out the dunk, right? Like he's just like,
that's like Dr. J or something, right? Then Dr. J, probably was before Dr. J, but Dr. J made the dunk famous. Babe Ruth made the home run famous, or maybe that was a way to get people to like. We're gonna make baseball America's pastime, but in order to do so, we need somebody who we can make the face of the sport. And they didn't have no face of the sport. So they're like, okay, let's make him a fictional guy that played for the Red Sox and was traded to the Yankees for like tickets to tickets to cats. You know what I'm saying? Like the Red Sox get a Yankees.
You tried to say leave
is there any footage of Babe Ruth in the Red Sox uniform? None. I'm telling you, Babe Ruth is a fictional character.
All right. We're back with segment number 2. Bettor Sports Network, Thursday Night Football, Dynasty Nerds. Just had a great interview with Jay Stein talking about how to invest, the best way to invest in your fantasy football teams, how to look at players as investments, as stocks. Awesome conversation there. Dennis Bennett, the great Dennis Bennett, will be joining us in about 13 minutes. And then, of course, I'm sure Gator at some point is going to hop on. I don't know when, but he's going to, and it's going to be great, and the people will love it. And GP looking good as always. Appreciate that. I'm just out here just trying to impress my wife out here, just trying to, be a good looking stand-up guy. And speaking of Gator, I just saw it. The request to come on stage, and I'm always going to hit accept when my man Gator comes on. Gator, how you doing tonight, buddy?
Man, what is going on? Man, what a great interview with Jay Stein right there. That was awesome.
He's a smart guy, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to definitely get into that article that he's putting out there because I only have one 6-0 team out of the 20 some odd teams that I have. But the one 6-0 team I do have is the greatest Devi of nerds through the nerd herd. So I am 6-0 in that league.
There you go. So you got a bunch of good young guys. For those of you that might not know what Devi is, it's the opportunity to get college players before they get to the NFL. So they have separate, drafts and things like that. It's super fun. I play in several Devi leagues, really enjoy it. Who were some of those guys that you got while they were in college that have now developed into, good NFL players?
No. This was a startup this year.
Oh, it was a startup. Okay.
Yeah, because so on the in the Discord, I had mentioned that I wanted to get into one. I'm already in one, but I wanted to get into a startup because I wasn't in the startup. And so, Hosley and a couple other guys were like, you know what, we'll do this, and then they put a message out. I was like, hey, anybody interested? We know Gator wants in,
right?
And then all of a sudden we had like 12 people. So we got some of the nerds and some of the herd all joined in. So it's actually been pretty fun. I have to see, just trying to give you an idea here. So of course, B-John was like one of the first ones taken off. Let's see if I can even figure out here.
Now, did you guys do separate startup and Devi draft, or
Yes. Yeah.
okay, you did
Yeah,
separate?
we
Because
did.
sometimes people do them all together at the same time.
No, we did separate, which was really cool.
Okay.
Especially being a startup, because I'm doing a lot more C2C as well.
Okay, and that's a whole nother level even than Devi.
That's a whole nother level. So, give you just mine alone. I've got just in my Devi side, I got Keyshawn Boutte, Anthony Richardson, Ja'Cory Brooks, Evan Stewart, CJ Williams,
Okay.
and Jatavion Sanders.
All right, I see you. Nice little squad there. The NFL squad obviously is looking pretty good too, right? Because you're 6-0.
They're 6-0. I mean, wait.
So give me a hint on a couple players leading the way for you there.
Oh, Burrow. Let's see, Devontae Adams, Olave, like he's doing tonight.
Playing well.
You know, my secret this year. I say my secret. I guess my the player that I picked up early, or I guess later in the draft, was Gerald Everett.
He's played well this year.
He's played super well. You know, also on that roster, I got Zeke, Robert Tonyan. You know, let's see who else is. Now I got to look at my bench. Oh, Cup is on my bench because of course,
Cooper Kupp. Not to mention the best receiver in football right now.
Yeah, he's on the bench. You know, he's taking a week off. So, I mean, I got a decent squad. So I need to make it one or two more weeks, and then I can then I'll feel better about the buys.
I get you. Gator, well, I got you. Because we're gonna have Dennis come on a little bit, but I want to ask you this question because I'm curious your thoughts, because I know you're as plugged in as anybody else out there. Naji Harris, running back 22 this year. He's only averaging 10.8 points per game in PPR. And, you know, he was somebody that I had talked about a lot in the offseason, and I got a lot of flack for being down on Naji Harris. I was worried about that offensive line. I knew he wasn't the most efficient player. And the biggest thing was transferring quarterbacks from Ben Roethlisberger, who's going to check it down a million times. That's what these older quarterbacks tend to do, to a young guy that's going to either chuck it down the field or take off and run. I was worried. And so far that's looking to be true. But we know Dynasty is not a game of just 1 year. He could rebound. He could come back. So what would you recommend the people to do? This is Gator segment here. We're going to take your advice as scripture here. All right.
No. I've never written the gospel. Never written the gospel, Garrett, and I do not intend to ever write one.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's good.
Never going to do that.
You should.
It would be bad.
It would be
bad.
The gospel according to Gator. But
yeah. Well, we'd have a lot of Southeastern Conference. Oh wait, no, we're talking about gospel. That's.
Oh man.
No, you know, I want to say truly and honestly, I don't know if you remember the first time you and I met on camera. It was backstage with Rewind.
Rewind, yeah.
So and we kind of hit on that. That was one of our common. We both were off the Naji train.
Mm-hmm.
The usage last year he was almost overused last year, in my opinion. You know, between the rushing and the passing, he was way overused because Ben Roethlisberger couldn't throw the ball, but about 3 yards down the field. You know, they used him off, coming out of the backfield, that sort of thing. So, yeah, I was off of Naji, so I was right there with you. And I don't see it getting any better. I don't. And same thing with CMC. How CMC is doing what he's doing in Carolina with that offensive line, no clue. But Naji needs to call him and find out, hey, what is the method? Because that is exactly what Naji needs to do. That offensive line is horrid. I don't know if you sell him now, you're not getting anything for him.
No,
because he's dropped off so far. I mean, even in startups this year, whether we're speaking dynasty, but even in redrafts, you were drafting him into the first, if not middle first, or early second.
Yeah. And
you're not getting the value for him.
No.
So not what you were paying for anyway. So I don't think there's anything you can do but hold him right now because I don't think you can recoup it for at least another year. They're going to have to upgrade that offensive line, upgrade it. I say upgrade, get Kenny Pickett into that quarterback position on a regular basis, hopefully protecting him better than for these concussions and everything. But he's 2 games into his NFL career and he's already got a concussion. That's not good either.
Not a good sign.
So yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you on Naji. A year into it, and man, when was he last year at the end of the year? He was in the top 4, top 5.
Yeah, I think he finished the year overall. I want to say he was running back 4. I can double check that. And that was overall points per game. I think he was more like 9 or 10. But still, he was an RB1 either way.
Right. And you're just seeing the rock just fall right off the cliff.
Yeah.
And we sit here and talk about age so many times. Dude's 24 years old.
Right. Yeah, he is not young compared to these other running backs in the same class. A lot of these other guys are 21, 22, 23. He's older than Jonathan Taylor. He's older than like guys that were in the class before him. So
yep, he's a product of Alabama.
Yep, absolutely. So all right, Gator. Well, I'm about to have Dennis on, but here's what I want you to do. If you're still on, I think, maybe around I'm thinking like 11:20, 11:25, maybe hop back on. We get the 3 amigos on again.
Oh, you want to replay of a couple weeks ago.
Okay. It got me through that miserable game. So, it has a soft spot in my heart.
What are we doing tonight? Because, how are we getting both of these teams have outscored. Tonight's game has outscored all of Thursday Night Football this year, I think.
Yeah, it's been unreal. It's been fun. It's been fun to finally see some points.
Let's rephrase it. Arizona's defense has outscored 63% of the teams that play on Thursday Night Football.
That's not wrong. That is not wrong, unfortunately.
Hey, I want to know. I got a question for the people. I'll be in the chat in a minute, but I got a question for the people, and I want them to answer this in the chat. Why is Garrett Price telling everybody Gator is the favorite of everybody? I want to know. I want to know for real. I don't want to hear Garrett sarcastic, because you're so nice. Because I'm not.
That's not sarcasm. It's true. The people love you, man. If the people loved me half as much as they love you, I'd be on ESPN by now.
No. You can't be on ESPN. No. We can't do that. We cannot do that because then you'll get your head so big.
That's true.
You'll be moving to Bristol and, Columbus, Ohio. I want that print that's right behind you over.
This one?
Let's see. Yes, I want that print for my wall.
It's pretty sweet. On it has the name of like every city in the state of Ohio. That's what you're seeing in there. It's cool.
So on the Bettor Sports, when I'm looking at you here, I can't see it. That's why I had to get onto the YouTube side. I could see everything.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I know my fingers are going crazy right now, but I think it's awesome. I want that print.
It's cool, man. It is I got it like almost 10 years ago now, and it's still one of my favorite things that I have.
Well, you tell the coach I'll holler back at him in 20 minutes.
Sounds good, man.
All right, brother. Y'all be good out there. Answer it in the comments, please.
Do it, people. Do it for Gator. We'll see you, buddy. All right. That is the legend himself, none other than Gator. Go ahead and put in the comments why we love having Gator on the show. He thinks I'm blowing smoke, I think. I think he thinks I'm not serious. That half the reason people come here is so they get to interact with the legend himself. So go ahead and put that in the comments. And any other questions you have about the game tonight, fantasy football this season, anything like that. As we get Dennis Bennett up here, quick update on the Astros game. Astros take the game 3-2, lead the series 2-0. So that's going to be tough for New York to be able to come back. They were behind the 8 ball with having to play the 5 games against the Indians. or the Guardians. My apologies. And, that can be difficult. I don't see them coming back in this, but we'll see. We'll see. Heavy T says, because his name is a Gator and he rules. Also a fan of his Falcon helmet in the background. Yeah, to figure out who's on the Falcon helmet. But we go from one legend to the next. Dennis Bennett, how you doing, buddy?
Well, if I could have gotten a touchdown maybe from Nuke Hopkins instead of Greg Dortch, that would have been fantastic.
That would have been nice. But he's not putting up a bad game.
No, he's having a great game. I mean, what's he got? Like 9 catches for 99 yards.
That's exactly right.
I don't do the Wednesday fantasy football roundtable show, but I still pick the game on it with Matt. And I put in there, I'm like, look, Nuke Hopkins is coming back. There's no Marquise Brown. I'm picking the Cardinals because it's a Nuke game. But, man, and now they're up. I don't want him to get the touchdown now because I'd like to see – Chris Olave and Andy Dalton, whom I have on other teams, maybe
there you go, score a little bit.
But
keep it close enough that they're trying to win still.
Right.
Yep, I get you. How did you do on your prize picks? Because we were talking about that a little bit earlier. I only did 6, but so far, and I say so far, I think all of them are basically decided. I took the over on Andy Dalton at 210.5. I got that one. I took the under on Kyler Murray at 245. So far, that's good. I took the over with Kamara at 62.5. That has not hit yet. So I'm waiting on that one. I took the under on Eno Benjamin. That definitely will not hit. He has 87 yards, so 51.5. He crushed that. And then I took the over on both the receivers, Olave and Hopkins. So far, I have 3 for sure correct, 2 still floating out there, and 1 definitely wrong.
Well, I took the over on receptions for Hopkins. They had it at 5.
Nice.
So I like that. The yards, I took the yards on Hopkins as well. I was a little nervous about Dalton, and so I was kind of non-committal. Arizona does give up 249 points a game, but Dalton just hasn't really been great. And so missing 2 of his top 3 receiving options, I was a little bit nervous. So I kind of stayed away from Dalton. I did, though, take the under on Murray. And
it's looking good so far. He's at 200 yards, and he needs 245.5. So it doesn't look like they're going to be throwing much more.
Yeah, I think they're in a spot now where they're going to try to use the running game and grind out the clock. And the other one that I was really on was Kamara, and I texted you earlier. I said,
"Yeah,
do you feel like Kamara had 28 opportunities and 25 touches just 4 days ago? Do you feel like it might be a little bit less of an Alvin Kamara game, and maybe more Mark Ingram? Now Ingram is shit in the bed. But Kamara, he's got six targets and 4 receptions and 11 rushes for 49. So I like the under on Kamara on the rushing, which was 62.5. Even though he'd been averaging 75.5 yards per game, I just felt like the 4-day, I was buying into the
wear and tear.
Seem like they pick one of the 2 games. If you've got 2 viable options, one of them gets a heavier workload on Sunday, the other one gets a heavier workload on Thursday, because they know it's a long season and they're trying to make up for it. Now, I feel like Kamara is kind of transitioning a little bit into more of a traditional banger. He was 215 pounds coming out of college, so he is a big guy. But he also he doesn't play through injuries really well. He'll play, he just will struggle when he plays.
Sure.
Unlike Zeke, who will, now that he's older, he doesn't play through them as well. But when he was younger, it was like, screw that. I'm still good. I'll hammer it out.
Well, we have a question down here for you. Jackson's Jigsaw says, "Hey Dennis, I have a question. Both of us are 6-0. I face you in week 9. How much of a bribe do you need so I win week 9?
Dude, I am the commissioner of that league, and you are the defending champion of the Nerds Give Back Dynasty Best Ball Charity League. Maybe we'll talk about an extra donation. I don't know. No, I can't do that. That's just like I'm the guy. I've got like six teams that are tanking that are like 3-3 because I just can't start my shittiest lineup. I struggle with that. It's like, it makes my rebuilds take at least an extra season, because if I don't trade away everybody that's any good, like I have a tanking team that last week won. Now this is a lot of players, and
Sure.
I won 173 to 112 against somebody, and I'm tanking. And my quarterbacks in that league last week, PJ Walker and Skylar Thompson. That's who I started at quarterback last week, and I scored 173 points.
Oh man, that's tough.
And I'm like, well, maybe I shouldn't rebuild. And I look at my quarterbacks and like, I don't have a court. Like, I'm starting Josh Dobbs this week, hoping maybe Brissett is out and he gets a little bit of run.
I mean, you never know.
Luckily, Brown is starting again this week, so I'll have him at least.
There you go. Well, Dennis, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about tonight was this 2023 rookie class. We've been talking a lot about this current year's rookie class, but this 23 class has been talked about and discussed and analyzed seemingly forever. Like this has been like the class that everyone has been talking about since they were in 8th grade. Like everyone's talking about this 23 class. Right now, what kind of value does this class have for you?
Like right now, the class is really top heavy.
Okay.
It kind of feels like it's CJ Stroud and Bryce Young are like the two top guys. And then like Will Levis and who else? Maybe Tyler Van Dyke, Hendon Hooker starting to come on. There's some guys who are probably going to be first-round picks that are going to be questionable. Are they first-round picks because of their talent, or are they first-round picks because they're quarterbacks? And I think that there's some guys that have to put in some more work the rest of the season, I think, to make it up. Like I think Levis is earning it. Hooker, I'm not sure about. DJU, I'm not sold on him. He's starting to come around a little bit.
What about Anthony Richardson?
Like,
be careful, Gators in the chat.
I love how his season started. It started off and he looked great, but I think Anthony Richardson to me has to kind of start to play a more complete game. How can he, he's very athletic. He's got a good arm.
Crazy athletic.
I don't know. Like he's at Florida and we know what they did with Dameon Pierce. They didn't use him great. So is it more college coaches not using, they don't care about NFL teams anymore than NFL players care about our fantasy teams, if we're being honest. So I like Richardson, but I don't think he's a step in year one. But we've seen before guys who we didn't expect that came at Davis Mills, Bailey Zappi. There were a lot of people who weren't high on Justin Herbert, and he came in. And I think when I look at the quarterback situation across the NFL, to me, there's like 10 quarterbacks that I look 3 to 4 years out and I feel like they're still going to be starting quarterbacks, could still be on their team if not for a contract situation that comes up.
We got a fight going here, Dennis. It's been an intense game. Lots of points, lots of turnovers. Traquan Smith made a nice little catch to the sideline and tried to step over the defensive back. And when he did, the dude stood up and flipped him over and caused a little bit of roughhousing here. You'd love to see it.
Yeah, you know,
Love to see it.
football's a competitive sport. You step over somebody, you run the risk. That's
Yep. That's how it works.
You know, that's what you don't want him. If I'm the defender, I'm not gonna lay on the ground. I'm gonna get up. If you're stepping over me, you know, be
Disrespectful.
quick. Yep.
Yep.
But
disrespectful.
also, you know, Smith was kind of going that direction anyways. It wasn't like he walked over and said, "Hey," he didn't pull an Iverson.
No, it wasn't quite that bad. It wasn't quite that
Yeah.
bad. All right, going back to the 23 class though. So right now, if we had a mid-range 23 first round pick, so let's just say we knew it was going to be like 6 or 7, like somewhere in there. How valuable is that pick to you? You talked about it. It's top heavy at the quarterback, and I'm assuming you meant not just at quarterback, but at all the positions, right? You feel like it's a little top heavy.
Well, there's definitely players that everybody's been talking about for a couple of years that are living up to the billing. You know, Jordan Addison's coming on and he's playing really, really well. Smith and Jigba has been on the sideline, hasn't done much. Bijan's doing great. Sean Tucker's playing well. There are a lot of people that are living up to their billing. So I think the first round is going to shake out. Let me see if I can find our draft we got going on.
Oh, there you go.
Rookie draft that's mock draft happening as we speak. That'll be out probably in a few days.
Is this the first one of the year?
Yeah, it's 1.0. So
yes, love it.
So
draft season.
In the Superflex, we actually had Bijan go 101.
Okay.
Let's see.
That doesn't surprise me. I know Superflex, you see quarterbacks a lot early, but the expectations of Bijan are so high that it doesn't surprise me as much as I would normally think.
He's almost I don't know if he's going to be able to meet the expectations. They're so high.
It's very similar to Saquon. It reminds me a lot of Saquon's year when he came out.
I mean, Stroud and Bryce Young are top tier prospects, and he's being drafted ahead of them. And in Superflex leagues, I think it could really be. I don't want to say you'll be able to buy him low if he doesn't outperform them from the get-go, but Will Levis was the third quarterback off, and DJ went 201, so there were only 4 quarterbacks go in the first 13 picks of a Superflex draft.
DJ, and I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but Ungalele, he's the one that
went 201.
Interesting. I know he's had a much better season after last year's grave disappointment, but I'm surprised people are that high on him at this point.
Yeah, I think for him, he reminds me of his throwing motion is so long and slow to me, and I feel like he's got to get that short and quick, because I think his decision making is okay. I just think it takes him extra time to execute when he decides. Now he's big. He's 6'3", 250, 6'4", 250. So he's a big guy. He's kind of in that Ben Roethlisberger mold when it comes to physicality. Sure. And so that may help him because he'll be able to kind of take some shots and still make some plays.
Hang on the ball a little longer than other guys might be able to.
Yep. And now that's not necessarily a good thing, as we see with Justin Fields. That's kind of the knock on him, as he holds the ball too long. DJ doesn't run as well as Fields, but no, we in this mock draft, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 running backs in the first round, 3 quarterbacks, and 4 wide receivers. So I feel like if I'm at 106, 107, I don't know. Maybe I take Will Levis. I don't know that anybody else is probably going to be that high for me after Stroud. And now I got to be honest, at 101, I don't know that I would take Bijan in a Superflex league, just because I think Stroud and Young are going to be good enough talents. I think the biggest issue for me with Stroud is if he measures in under 6 foot. That's going to give me concern. Just because, you've got to. I know smaller quarterbacks are having a little more success as
Sure.
of late, but it's hard for me to go. If he's 5'10", I probably won't take him until the 4th or 5th pick if I'm
Now
there.
you said CJ Stroud. I'm assuming you mean Bryce Young.
I
that
meant
worried
Bryce Young. My bad.
about. Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense though.
Sorry, I was looking at my OSU jerseys in the background here.
Yeah, no, you're good, man. You're good. I get it. Yeah, that is going to be an interesting conversation point.
Another touchdown for Juwan Johnson.
Man, he's making plays.
Man, I think he's going to take that job.
I mean, I don't see why not. I know Troutman has been the guy that we've been talking about for a long time, but he's played really well. All right, so if you have that mid first, what kind of value compared to like the players in the league right now? Like, who would you trade straight up for a 23 first? Like, what do you think would be fair value?
It's so team specific for me. In a fairly traditional league, let's say super flex, 2 running back, 3 wide receivers, a mid first is probably going to get me, I don't know, a low end wide receiver 1 or 2. I'm probably not looking at, and it's probably going to be an older one. So I don't know, like, would you, I might go for, if I'm, let's say I acquired that pick, 106, 107, and I'm a competitive team, I might be willing to pay that for a Mike Evans or a Nuke Hopkins, even though they're 28 or 30 years old, because I know I'm trying to win now.
Let's say you're a middle of the road team. Let's say that pick's yours, and you're kind of trying to figure out what direction you're going. Would you rather have the mid 23 first or Michael Pittman Jr.?
I'd rather have Michael Pittman Jr. I feel like he's got staying power. Like if somebody was offering, like, I would not trade Michael Pittman Jr.
You'd rather have Michael Pittman. Yeah.
A mid 23 first.
Would you rather have Devontae Smith or a mid 23 first?
I think I'd go with the mid 23 first.
Okay.
I like Smith, but I feel like
what? My producer just let me know, per Adam Schefter, to the San Francisco 49ers goes Christian McCaffrey. This is unreal. I did not think that they were going to end up getting a deal for Christian McCaffrey done. Anybody was going to get a deal done with him just because the asking price was going to be so high. Wow, I am shocked. And Gator, I think roughly on the timing, but I think he's excited about this news as well. So let's get Gator up here as well and see what he has to say about this. But I am shocked. Christian McCaffrey to the San Francisco 49ers. Dennis, real quick, I want your reaction. But for me, and Gator will get yours as well. But for me, this doesn't change much for me on his value, right?
Right.
He was already one of the top running backs in the league. He was already getting the targets. He was already getting the rushing workload. So this doesn't change much for me. I know that the San Francisco 49ers are a good team and it's a good landing spot, but this doesn't really change his value much for me. And it really doesn't change a lot of the value of anybody else except for maybe a slight boost to Jimmy G because he'll have an elite outlet to throw the ball to when it doesn't work out to Debo or Ayuk or Kittle. But I don't, as huge of news as this is for NFL purposes, I don't know that it changes a ton for fantasy football. What do you think, Dennis?
Yeah, it doesn't change it. Maybe I think it extends McCaffrey's value a little bit because there's a little more certainty in what's going on in San Francisco. Lynch and Shanahan are stable. What's going on in Carolina is a hot mess. I'm curious what they got for him. What Rappaport is saying is they were deep in talks with the Rams and 49ers for multiple second-day picks.
Interesting.
So it's looking.
You know what would have been really interesting if it had been for Trey Lance. That would have been.
Oh
funny.
yeah, wouldn't that? I mean that's like a classic fantasy football trade.
That's a fantasy football trade right there.
No, I think McCaffrey's going to be good. It's going to be good for him. You know, he seems like he's after his super heavy workload season. It's been a couple years. I think he's back healthy now. He's going to a system that is really, really good for running backs. So he could go ahead and shoot up and become the RB1 the rest of the way.
Sure.
I feel a lot better about him there with Garoppolo than I do maybe with Lance, just because Lance was still learning to be an NFL quarterback. Now, I don't know what this means for next year with Lance coming back.
Yeah,
I feel like Garoppolo is gone. I mean, would they get rid of Lance? Are they going to?
I think it depends on how far they go. You know, if they can take it, and Gator's exactly right. If they can get a ring, I don't know. Gator, what do you think?
Man, if they get a ring right now, holy smokes. Trey Lance might be on the trade block. I mean, it seemed like John Lynch was the one that made that pick, to be quite honest.
Right.
If you look back at the history of it all, and it seemed like Shanahan wanted Mac Jones. Jimmy G was there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they didn't take a huge discount to keep Jimmy G. Thank God they did because of what happened to Trey Lance.
Right.
I don't know that it does a huge boost to CMC, but it does one a hell of a boost for Jimmy G. It does one hell of a boost for a couple other players on that San Francisco offense, and maybe it does do a little bit of a boost with having a quarterback. I don't know if it's a line now that for CMC. I mean, CMC was already doing pretty daggum good in Carolina with no offensive line.
It's true,
and a piece of crap at quarterback. You know what I mean? And Baker Mayfield.
Darnold was coming back. Darnold was coming back.
Who?
Sam Darnold?
Who? Who? There's owls in my yard. I couldn't hear you. Who?
the thing we don't know though, and this is going to be the biggest thing I think for his value that we don't 100% know yet is how much is he going to be involved in the passing game, because that's where CMC's value is always taken him from a good running back to an elite running back. Is he still going to see 8-9 targets a game, or is he going to see 3, 4, 5 targets a game? That'll be the big difference maker there.
But can he maximize those targets where he couldn't in Carolina?
Maybe.
The other question is what is CMC's contract? Because what does that do to Elijah Mitchell?
I think he has 2 years left, and I think Elijah Mitchell just becomes a good backup. I mean, him, Jeff Wilson, I think they will rotate those guys in here and there, but I still think we're going to get 18 to 24 touches per game for CMC. You'll get 3 or 4 here for Mitchell, 3 or 4 here for Wilson.
Oh, you're not giving up the draft picks that they're giving up and not giving him the ball.
Yeah.
Right.
The only other question that just crossed my mind is they love Jeff Wilson down by the goal line. Will Christian McCaffrey be the goal line guy, or will they still use Jeff Wilson as the goal line guy? Because that could be interesting as well for his value.
Now,
or do they not even get to the goal line?
They're gonna. I mean, you don't trade for Christian McCaffrey and give Jeff Wilson goal line touches, unless it's a situation like McCaffrey got to the 1 and he's winded. Then you put Jeff Wilson in, McCaffrey taps out or something. I don't know. McCaffrey's RB4 on the season after 6 weeks. Nick Chubb has fallen. He doesn't catch passes. And this is in PPR leagues. So he'll by the end of week 7, McCaffrey will, whether by the end of week 8, let's assume McCaffrey doesn't play this week. McCaffrey will have moved up to RB3, even missing an extra week.
This is wild. Absolutely wild.
Well, I have a question on the other side of it. What does it do to DJ Moore's value?
Yeah, that's our producer Tyler, he asked that as well. What does this mean for DJ Moore or any of their other assets? I mean, I think they are legitimately going to clean house. I think anybody that has any sort of value, the only one I'm not sold on them dealing will maybe be Brian Burns. I think they might try to build the defense around him. But anybody else that is even outside of their first 2 seasons, I could easily see them moving on from and trading. DJ Moore is going to be a really, really interesting one because that's always been the biggest, the most frustrating part about his value, similar to Stephon Diggs, was just what would he do with a good workload? What would he do with a competent quarterback? What would he do with, we've had those questions for so long with DJ Moore. And hopefully we'll get to find out. Hopefully he ends up in Kansas City, in Green Bay, in one of these situations where it's a team that desperately needs a playmaking receiver, and it's coming from a good quarterback. So I think it's cleaning house, but DJ Moore is the other big piece of this that could fall, and it would be really interesting. One other quick note, John Lynch getting Christian McCaffrey, which is the son of his former teammate, Ed McCaffrey, when they played in Denver. I wonder if that was the anything to help seal the deal. I don't know, but I always find those connections interesting.
Yeah, that is quite interesting.
Hold on real quick. What were you saying, Tyler? Oh, so they never crossed? Interesting. All right, we'll have to look. They might not have crossed paths. He's saying that their timeline might have been a year or 2 off. So we'll have to see on that. What are your guys' thoughts on DJ Moore? Dennis, what do you think?
So before we go there, it looks like the Panthers are getting a 23 second, a 23 third, a 23 fourth, and a 24 fifth.
Wow. That's a lot of draft capital.
Yeah, I think that I agree. Everybody's on the block in Carolina right now. They're having a fire sale, and they're going to get great value. They're going for draft picks. I'm not going to be surprised if DJ Moore gets traded for picks and ends up, Kansas City's a great. I think he would be great there. And I think Andy Reid and Brett Veach need to look around and go, well, what is the biggest shortcoming of this team right now? And it's the wide receiver position. Juju had a good game, but I don't think that's something you can expect out of Juju. As much as I love MVS is doing MVS things. It's relevant sometimes he's not. Sky Moore has been slow to come on. Mm-hmm. But could you see Patrick Mahomes next season with Sky Moore and DJ Moore?
More to love.
How about Dallas?
Dallas is possible. Dallas is definitely possible. They did get Gallup back, but you can never rule out Jerry Jones.
No,
I mean, you can never rule out Jerry Jones, especially with a splashy move. So yeah, I definitely wouldn't rule them out of the sweepstakes either. I do think the front runners are absolutely Green Bay and Kansas City. I think those are the two that would seem most likely to me. But you never know. We could even see a situation, because we've seen a lot of wide receivers moved. It could be a situation where he ends up getting traded to the Jets for Elijah Moore, and they try to build with a younger wide receiver. And I know that wouldn't be nearly as exciting for fantasy, but that's not something we would want. But we could see a situation like that as well, where it's you take a disgruntled player, flip him for somebody. So I'm really interested to see how that all plays out.
Well, I just wanted to jump back in, get the three amigos together again.
Appreciate you coming back on, buddy.
All right, brother. Y'all be good. Dennis, it was great seeing you.
You too, man.
GP, I love
See
you, brother.
around the Discord.
Love you,
We'll
man.
see you next week.
All right, we'll see you. And that actually works out timing wise. Dennis, real quick, I think we're going to take a break. Before we do, though, remind the good people where they can find you on Twitter. Gator, if you're still on, why don't you remind the people as well where they can find you on Twitter. Dennis, go ahead and go first.
So you can find me on Twitter at culture_coach. Mondays and Fridays, you can find me on the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast on the Pigskin Podcast Network. And I float around the streets here at the Bettor Sports Network. I'm here every other week. And then I try to stick my nose in other people's shows, trying to keep my face out there. Writing, working at Dynasty Nerds, ranking over at Fantasy Nation for redraft Superflex rankings and Dynasty rankings over at dynastynerds.com.
Love it. And Gator, what do you got going on? Tell the good people.
Man, I'm going to Turks and Caicos Sunday morning. I have no idea what's going on after that.
I love it.
You can find me on Twitter, Fantasy J, spell it out, JAY77. You can find me on Wednesday nights, Fantasy Intervention. You can find me on Thursday nights right before I jump on here at the Dynasty Gambit with the Going for Two Network. You can find some of my writings when I do write at goingfor2.com.
Love it. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys. We're going to take a quick break, and then we get back. We will wrap up what happened in this Thursday night game and talk about the fallout from the Christian McCaffrey trade. We'll be back in a minute.
Done better.
Appreciate you guys.
Thanks, man.
The Playbook with Fensty and Ronis, presented by FantasyAlarm.com.
The only person, I've said this to you before, who I believe back then, of all those power hitters who truly was clean, Ken Griffey Jr.
I mean, I think so when he got hurt.
Body didn't change.
We'll never know that
Got
for
hurt.
sure either.
No, dude,
We've seen guys who were not big take substances
that's true.
to get busted. So it's not about that always.
I hear you. It's just, don't you think with the way his career kind of went, you would think that he didn't take anything?
I don't think he did, but we'll never know 100%.
I'm going to keep telling myself that he didn't. The one year, I mean, he's my favorite baseball player of all time. In the 1990s, Ron, as a kid, as a 5-year-old kid who plays video games and collected cards, there was no one cooler than Ken Griffey Jr. I still wear my hat backwards because Ken Griffey Jr. did it and he looked really cool doing that, wearing a backwards baseball cap. Like, he made everything the guy did looked cool. Even the home run in the movie Little Big League, it's acting, it's all, I guess, fake, but even he made that look cool. I mean, Ken Griffey Jr., you're a little bit older than me, but in the 90s, was there besides Michael Jordan, was there a more loved athlete than Ken Griffey Jr.?
Yeah, no, I love Griffey. He's one of my favorite players ever, from defensively to hitting his swing. And yeah, I would have loved to see what he could have done if he had stayed healthy, the final numbers he finished with. So no, I was a huge fan of Ken Griffey, and it's a shame though that all those injuries towards the end of his career just really limited the production he put up, but he still put up elite numbers. He was so fun to watch. So I'm a huge Ken Griffey guy.
And here's the other thing too. So 1994, the season got shortened because of the strike.
Yeah, he finished with 40 homers in 111 games that year, man. And then he had 56 2 years in a row, 97 and 98, and then 48. He had a stretch 4 years in a row, 49, 56, 56, 48, 40. I mean, unbelievable. And then, yeah, once he hit like 31, he started to miss games, 111, 70, 53, 83. So think about that. All those years that he lost, and he still hit 630 home runs, man. Yeah. So if he was clean, he would have been the all-time home run champion. Again, we're all guessing here, but you would think, all right, well, once he got into age 31, 32, that's when the body started breaking out, which is typical, right, for someone who's not using anything, whereas we saw Barry Bonds just get better with age, and we did not see that with Griffey. So look at 2001, where he's 31, he played on, look at the home runs decline, 8, 13, 20, 35, 27, 30, 18, 15 to his age 38 season. Even age 39 in 170 games, he had 19 home runs. So he probably would have definitely been the all-time home run leader had he been able to stay healthy.
Better Sports Network. It's sports talk done better.
Christian McCaffrey is a San Francisco 49er. I'm surprised, if I'm being completely honest. I did not think that there was going to end up being a deal that worked. One, I didn't know that if the Carolina Panthers would be willing to take anything less than a first. I thought they were going to demand a first. Now, don't get me wrong. They got a haul. They got a second, a third, a fourth, and a fifth the following year. So they still got a really good haul, especially for a rebuilding team that is low on assets. They did pretty well as far as that goes. But I didn't think he would get moved. And then the 49ers, they weren't even really on my radar. You know, I thought it would end up being maybe the Bills or I really did not think that it would end up being I thought it could be the Rams, maybe involved in a Cam Akers deal. And it sounded like the Rams were involved, but the 49ers really were not even on my radar. And clearly they should have been. Gator said, well, I wanted to talk sexy with Dennis. Oh, well, you know, you can talk sexy with Dennis on the side. You know, we're trying to keep the show PG, Gator. So, you know, little square me over here. But massive news. Type in the chat here what you guys think as far as his value goes. Up, down, stays the same. For redraft, for dynasty, like what are your guys' thoughts? For me, I really don't think this moves the needle much. I think he's still going to be one of the better backs in the league, and I don't think he's going to have this massive increase in production, but I don't think it's going to kill him either. I think he's gonna pretty much you know, be the same. He said Tevi. I wondered if that was an autocorrect. Hey, if you want to talk sexy with Dennis, you can talk sexy with Dennis if you want to, man. No judgment here. But Devi makes a little more sense in the context of our show. So kind of lost in all of this. This Thursday night football game has ended. It saw the Arizona Cardinals put up 42 points. We know 2 of those were defensive touchdowns. We saw 42 points, 42-34 in favor of the Cardinals. A lot more points than we've seen most weeks. Better Boss saying head coach Shanahan play calling will increase CMC's value. So if that's the case, I mean, we've seen what his ceiling is, right? We've seen what his ceiling can be. We're talking upper 20s per game in PPR leagues. If that's the case, I mean, his value is ridiculous. I think it stays the same. I don't think it's going to change much. I think he's still going to be, you know, a top 5 running back, but I don't think he's going to separate himself. Right now he's averaging 19.7 points a game. I think he's going to stay in that 18 to 22 points per game range. I think that's where he's going to live, which is fantastic. Just fantastic. But I don't think he's going to go nuclear like you know others might believe. But we'll see. If Shanahan can scheme him right, if they still use him on the goal line, if they still use him as much in the receiving game as he was using Carolina, obviously it will be a pretty big deal for him. Also, DJ Moore. Where do you guys think DJ Moore ends up? My top 2 choices right now would be why am I blanking? Green Bay and Kansas City. I think those are the 2 most likely teams. But here's a couple dark horse teams that I want to throw out there. New York Giants. We've seen that they have basically no wide receivers. And on top of that, they are playing really well. They're a team that's looking like a legitimate playoff contender at 5-1. They've beat some good teams. So I think the Giants could be maybe a dark horse that you could throw your name in there. Another one could potentially be the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee Titans have Treylon Burks that they drafted, but he's been banged up. They're a team that is looking to win the division there, which I think they will. So Tennessee Titans could be another possibility. Going down a little further, I think maybe the Vikings. We've seen this new offense. It's looked pretty good so far. They're another team that's won a lot of games. Producer Tyler saying the Bucks are a sleeper. Possibly. They had Antonio Brown last year. There's a gap there. They're looking to put up more points. I think that's in the realm of possibility that we could see him there. I'm trying to think of where else that we could see him. I don't think we see him in Buffalo. I don't think we see him. Chicago should make a call, but that would be awful for his fantasy football value. They desperately need a receiver, and DJ Moore would be an awesome one, but I don't know. Foreman and Chuba blowing up leagues everywhere. I snagged Blackshear in a deep dynasty league. Yeah, that's something right now. If your waivers are open, go grab Danta Foreman. Go grab Chuba Hubbard. In fact, while I'm talking, I should check and see if they've been picked up anywhere because, Danta just got picked up in one of my leagues. And I had him a couple weeks ago, so that's funny that he was available. But right now, I would say Foreman. I think Foreman is built to take the load. I think he's the more physically imposing back. Chuba's going to get you more of the home runs, but I think more consistently you're going to see Foreman be the better play there. Jolin saying 49ers owe Christian McCaffrey just $690,000 for the remainder of the 22 season. He's on the books for $12 million in 23 and 24 and $12 million in 25 with just $1 million guaranteed for injury. So he's going to be a 49er for the long term. And there's been some really good backs that have worn the wine and gold over there in 49ers country. So he's going to be the next in line with a lot of really good running backs that we've seen over there in San Francisco. So it's going to be fun. Hopefully, the one issue we've had with the 49ers is for whatever reason, they are always getting injured. The running backs in San Francisco are always getting injured. And he is somebody that has not necessarily shown the propensity to stay healthy. So hopefully that curse is lifted. Hopefully we don't have those issues anymore. But John's also thinking CMC's NEC value goes up since the 49ers are a contender if he stays healthy. So a lot of people thinking that he goes up. I'm thinking he's going to maintain. I don't think this changes his value a whole lot. It's tough. It's tough to go up from being elite, right? I mean, he's one of the best running backs in the league. He's fantastic. So it's tough to go up, but I understand the argument. If you think that the difference making in the play calling, the culture, the style of the San Francisco 49ers, this is all assuming health, obviously. This is all assuming health. But if that's the case, then yeah, I can understand that argument. I do. Changing teams, some guys do it beautifully and gracefully. Other guys, it's a little bit more difficult. But you just never know the role. What we knew for sure, and let me look while we're talking, because I want to see what the touch workload has been like for Christian McCaffrey. So let's see what his touch workload has been like so far here. So snap percentage obviously has been ridiculous every single game, but we're seeing 15 touches, or at least opportunities, I should say. I'm counting targets and rushing attempts. So first week, 15, 20. Then we had 29, 17, 26, and then 21. So we're seeing, for the most part, in the 20s. Maybe a couple there. We had teens week 1. It was, a little off. But other than that, he's getting in the 20s for touches, and he's getting the work in the receiving game. So I don't know. It's just tough to see that he would get that many more touches than he's already been getting. And yes, he could be a little bit more effective with them, but there's other weapons here. He's been the only weapon other than what we hope DJ Moore would be. He's been the only weapon. Now there's a lot more weapons. Moore is saying now the 49ers need is a quarterback. CMC surrounded by more talent on the 49ers, less likely less touches than on the Panthers, in my opinion. John saying Rams were the other team trying to acquire CMC. My producer's telling me what helped the 49ers pull off the trade for Christian McCaffrey was they had 6 extra third-round compensatory draft picks granted to them for losing Robert Saleh to the Jets, Mike McDaniel to the Dolphins, and Martin Mayhew to the Commanders in this recent offseason per Schefter. So all of those losing all of those coaches to other teams, other regimes, was a benefit for them. Pick up Foreman or Hubbard. I mentioned that just a second ago, but Foreman is the guy for me. If your waivers if it's a waiver system or a fab system and it's not open pickup right now for a lot of people, after Wednesday it's open pickup, but Foreman's the guy that I would want more than Hubbard. I think Hubbard's a talented back. I think he can do explosive things, but as far as the every down grinding between the tackles work, I think that is going to be more of Danta Foreman. I think he's going to get more touches. And even though you always have that explosive opportunity with Chuba that could happen, I want the more steady Eddie, the more reliable guy. I think Foreman's going to be the more reliable guy. Did you hear about Danta Foreman news? Huge. Well, what? There's news? I mean, how? There's more news? Because I'm trying to keep up with the show, so I'm not able to see everything. Okay, all right. Oh, just that he's the starter. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard if they officially announced or not. But he would be the guy that, for me, that would be the guy I would pick up. But even with that, my expectations are pretty low. It's not a great offensive line. There's, especially with DJ Moore, more than likely being dealt now. After you move a guy like Christian McCaffrey, I think you're going to move on from DJ Moore as well. So with that being said, it's going to be a bad offense. It just is. It's going to be a bad offense. Maybe Baker's back. Maybe it's Darnold. Maybe it really doesn't matter at this point. It's going to be anemic there in Carolina. And they're basically playing to try to get the first overall pick, which will probably be a new quarterback. So I apologize to either CJ Stroud or Bryce Young. You are likely going to be wearing Carolina Panther blue, and it's going to be a rough couple years to start your career. But the good ones, they can put the team on their back and they can build from there. So we'll see what happens. Deebo Samuel, let's go back to the 49ers angle on all of this. Obviously, this is a plus for Jimmy Garoppolo. For Deebo Samuel, this does present an interesting question, because one of the things that's given him a big boost in value is his ability to also run the football, not just be a receiver in the passing game, but run the football as well. And he's getting opportunities to run 3, 4, 5 times a game. I don't know that they're going to need him to do that as much now with Christian McCaffrey here. However, Christian McCaffrey is a very versatile player. Let's not forget, coming out of college, there were some that were wondering, is he coming out as a receiver or running back? Even though he played more running back in college, there were some that thought he might come into the league as a receiver. Deebo is the same type of player, just on the opposite end. More naturally a receiver, but there are some that believe that he could be a very good running back in this league, kind of like how we've seen out of Cordero Patterson. And we've seen him run the football, and he looks good doing it. So my question would be, will we see a decrease in Deebo running the football, or will they somewhat use these two guys a little bit interchangeably? Will this allow Shanahan to get really creative and mix up his backfields, mix up who's in the slot? I think that's going to be pretty exciting, and I think it's going to be fun to watch out there. And especially with the Rams scuffling this year, I think the 49ers saw this as an opportunity to strike. And they've been a good team. They've been close. They've been to championship games. They've been to Super Bowls. They haven't been able to get quite over the top yet. As far as the rebuild goes, the Panthers are going to have a high first rounder, 2 second rounders, a third and 2 fourth rounders in this upcoming draft. Gator saying that this was a money-saving move for San Francisco. Now they don't have to pay the money, pay the rushing money for Deebo. There you go. It was all the long con in the end. It was all a long con. All right, guys. Going back real quick, I haven't heard people's thoughts on DJ Moore. Where do we think he's going? Do we think he's going to one of the favorites, Green Bay, Kansas City? Do we think a dark horse? We've heard the Bucs mentioned. I think the Vikings are a possibility. I think the Giants are a possibility. I think the Titans are a possibility. So there's a lot of potential options this week. Also, something to consider too, I don't know what this means for fantasy for Christian McCaffrey this week. There's a chance that he plays, but there's no way that he's going to be getting 20, 25 touches this week. I think it's very, very unlikely that happens on such a short week. So be interesting to see what that means for his availability this coming week. John says, DJ Moore to Kansas City or the Rams. John also asking, I need a QB play for this week. I have to drop one player off my roster. ETN, Melvin Gordon, or Pollard. Assuming this is redraft, it would probably, I would definitely be holding on to ETN. That's for sure. It's close between Melvin Gordon and Pollard for me. They said Gordon's going to be the starter this week. It's tough to trust, but Pollard's done enough. And especially if we end up seeing an injury to Zeke, he's going to go nuclear. So yeah, I would say I would drop Melvin Gordon. It looks like Gator agrees as well for dropping Melvin Gordon. Edward reminding us week 9 bye now for the 49ers. Week 9 bye. So that's when he'll really, I'm sure, get the full playbook on that bye, really get everything going. I wouldn't be surprised if they had a handful of plays. He's out there for 10 snaps or something like that this week. But I don't think it's till week 8 that we see him usable. And then over the bye and then into week 10, I think week 10 is when we're really going to see that really come full circle for him. But let's see, what's his schedule now for the 49ers down the stretch? Because I am curious about that as well for Christian McCaffrey. What do things look like down the stretch? Let's see here. Let me pull up his. All right. Tyler's going to pull it up for me as we're talking here, but it'll be really interesting. John saying Christian McCaffrey, who has already spoken to Coach Kyle Shanahan and Team Brass, travels tomorrow to his new home. If he plays Sunday, which he'll likely do, expect a red zone package. So it makes sense to me. Chiefs, Rams, Chargers, Cardinals. So, and there'll be a bye in between there. So a lot of high scoring games. That's probably good news. That's the only one that could be tough would be the Rams. You have Aaron Donald up there. But that's a pretty solid next few weeks for Christian McCaffrey as far as that goes. More saying, how do you feel about Kyron Williams? Kyron Williams is a player that I really liked coming out of Notre Dame. Gave him a pretty good nerd score, which is like our tape grades. I believe he was my 5th ranked running back in the class. If not, he was 6th. He ranked fairly high for me. Really liked his game. It was really just, he's not this huge home run hitter, although we saw some breakaway plays in college. He just doesn't have this elite speed, but we're talking a great third down back. Like, I think he could be absolutely elite as a third down back. He was one of, if not the best receiving back in the class. And on top of that, absolutely stellar in the pass protection game. So that's something that I think they're going to really value highly there. I think he'll start off as a third down guy, but that role is going to evolve over time, and he's going to become just more and more valuable. So somebody that I really like, Kyron Williams, I think he's going to be a solid player there for the Rams. And really at this point, what else are they going to do? Right? I don't know of any other teams right now that are going to be willing to trade running backs of any value. I mean, maybe Josh Jacobs could potentially be somebody that gets dealt if Vegas goes down too much more, but I wouldn't really expect that. Okay, so Tyler's telling me that it looks like it might be a challenge getting him in uniform for Sunday. We'll have to see. Either way, I'm not touching him in fantasy football this week for Christian McCaffrey. There's just not going to be enough packages. Even if, let's say, he gets on the field for 10 plays, that means he gets the ball maybe 5 out of those. even if it is in the red zone, you're hoping for 1 touchdown and 20 total yards. Like, that's still only 8 points. So I'm not touching him in fantasy football this week unless they're guaranteeing me 30 plus snaps. I'm not touching Christian McCaffrey football. But going back to Kyron Williams, I really like the player. I don't think that there's any other teams that are going to be dealing running backs. I mentioned I mentioned Josh Jacobs as a possibility, but I don't think that's overly likely. You could see maybe the Jaguars trading a guy like James Robinson, but once again, don't see that as overly likely. So I unless the 49ers deal a guy, but they're not going to deal somebody to a division rival. So at this point, I think it's going to be Henderson. They got Malcolm Brown back there, who's just a pedestrian between the tackle type runner. He's nothing exciting, nothing special. Kyron Williams could end up being a very solid player, specifically in the receiving game is where I think he'll get a lot of his work, but that could have always evolved into more. We've seen it happen before. Austin Eckler is a great example. Guy that started off as just this, third down back, and he just kept making plays. And eventually, with all the stuff that went down with Melvin Gordon, they're like, all right, we'll just go with Austin Eckler then. He's been playing well, so he's a guy that we like, and we're just going to stick with that. That could very well be what happens with the Rams. On top of that, we know that the Rams have traded a lot of their early picks. I think they don't have another first-round pick for like 2 years still, so we're going to be waiting on them having an early pick. And there's a lot of other holes. That offensive line needs some work. They've got some holes on defense this year, so I don't know how high of a priority. Sorry, excuse me. I don't know how high of a priority running back is going to be for them, especially if he comes in and plays well. So I like Kyron. That's the long way of going about saying I really like Kyron. I think he's a solid player. He's somebody that I would want to pick up for sure in Dynasty. But even in redraft, he's somebody that I would look to get in redraft as well and just stash on the end of my bench. You could probably still put him on IR at this point, but at some point he will come back, and I think he will be very, very valuable. I say very, very. He'll be valuable for fantasy football. Could end up sneaking into that RB2 kind of range is what I'm hoping for. So it was a lot. This was a crazy show. A lot of stuff going on. Appreciate Jay Stein coming on the show. Gator is always coming on, livening things up. Dennis Bennett with his professionalism. He's the man. Appreciate him coming on. It was a fun time with everyone in the chat. Appreciate all you guys contributing, talking. I had a blast. We actually had an entertaining, enjoyable game to watch tonight, and we didn't even get a chance to talk that much about it. The most exciting game that we've had on a Thursday night in a long time, and we didn't even get a chance to talk about it much. So it was funny how that worked out. But appreciate all of you guys. And next week we will be back again, same time, same place. We're going to be talking about who we have next week on the docket. Let me check real quick. Ravens and Tampa. Oh, we've got the Ravens and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tom Brady, Lamar Jackson. Oh man, so we get 2 good weeks in a row. Man, awesome. Well, I am Garrett Price. You can find me on Twitter at Dynasty Price. You can check out the podcast. It drops every single Wednesday. We drop 2 if you're part of the Nerd Herd. Don't forget to check out that Nerd Herd, and we will see you next week. Buccaneers and Ravens.